Working as a maid in a luxury hotel, the woman was paralyzed when she saw her late husband with his lover. She approached, and Mary wiped her brow as the warm sun filtered through the curtains of the small hotel room she was cleaning. The faint scent of lavender lingered in the air from the cleaning products she used, but even that soothing smell couldn't mask the weariness she felt deep in her bones. 7 long years had passed since Richard, her husband, had died, yet the weight of that loss never left her. It clung to her like the dust she constantly fought to clean off the polished furniture. Isabella, her daughter, was her anchor. Only 6 years old, with wide brown eyes that reminded Mary of Richard's softer side, Isabella was unaware of the struggles her mother faced each day. To Isabella, the world was still full of magic and wonder, and Mary worked tirelessly to preserve that innocence for as long as possible. But the truth, life had never been easy. And after Richard's accident, it had become a constant uphill battle. She remembered the day clearly, as if it had just happened. The police had come to their home, their faces grim as they told her Richard's car had veered off the road and plunged into a river. They searched for days, hoping to recover his body, but the current was strong and unforgiving. They found the wreckage of the car, but Richard had been swallowed by the depths of the river, leaving nothing but questions and heartache behind. Mary was pregnant with Isabella at the time. The shock, the grief, everything had hit her at once. But there was no time to fall apart. She had a baby on the way, and she knew she couldn't afford to crumble. So, she did what she had to do. She moved on, or at least tried. It wasn't easy, but over the years, she had managed to find a kind of fragile balance. Moving to this new city had been a fresh start. A quiet town with just enough opportunities to make a living, but not big enough to overwhelm her or Isabella. The job at the hotel wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. And for Mary, that was all that mattered now, keeping a roof over their heads and making sure Isabella had the childhood she deserved, one far removed from the dark memories of the past. She glanced at the clock hanging on the wall. Almost time to pick up Isabella from school. Her shift was nearly over, and soon she would return to their small, rented apartment on the edge of town. They had a routine: dinner, homework, a little TV time for Isabella, while Mary planned out her next day's work schedule. A routine that, though monotonous, brought her a sense of peace. It was predictable, safe. Or at least, she had thought it was. As she stood to finish dusting the window ledge, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and smiled as Isabella's face lit up the screen, a photo from her daughter's last birthday. Her smile was the brightest part of Mary's day. After sending a quick text to confirm she would be there soon, she slid the phone back into her pocket and finished up the last few tasks for the day. The hotel was quiet today, more than usual. Midweek, there weren't many guests, so she moved from room to room with minimal interruptions. Occasionally, a colleague would pass by in the hall, offering a quick nod or a brief chat about nothing important. But Mary kept to herself most of the time. She wasn't here to make friends. She was here to work, to survive. Her thoughts drifted to Richard again, as they often did when she had a moment of quiet. It wasn't fair. He should have been here, should have been a part of Isabella's life. She wondered, not for the first time, what he would think if he could see their daughter now. Isabella was growing up so fast, and every day Mary feared that Richard's absence would affect her in ways she couldn't yet see. But there was no point in dwelling on the past, she reminded herself. Richard was gone, and all she could do was focus on the present, on raising Isabella the best way she could. She had made peace with that, as much as one could. Some days were harder than others, but life went on. Mary finished the room, gathered her cleaning supplies, and headed down the corridor toward the service elevator. As she pushed her cart along the plush carpet, the weight of the day's work started to settle into her muscles. She looked forward to collapsing into bed later, knowing that tomorrow would be much of the same. Just another day. Another day of pushing forward. Mary stepped out of the service elevator and into the grand lobby of the hotel, its marble floors gleaming under the soft golden light of the chandeliers. She liked walking through the lobby at the end of her shift, It felt like a different world from the simple life she lived. The wealthy guests in their tailored suits and designer dresses, their laughter and conversations floating above her as if she were invisible. She didn't mind. Sometimes, invisibility felt like a gift. No one expected anything from her, and she didn't have to pretend to be someone she wasn't. As she made her way to the back exit, the sound of a familiar voice stopped her in her tracks. It was deep, steady, an echo of a voice she had long ago buried in her memories. Her heart skipped a beat, and she froze, gripping the handle of her cleaning cart so tightly that her knuckles turned white. It couldn't be. She turned her head slowly, almost afraid to look. And there he was, standing near the entrance of the hotel with his back turned to her. The same tall, broad-shouldered figure she had once leaned against on late nights after dinner. The same confident stance, the way he tilted his head when he was talking to someone, just like he always had. Richard. Her breath caught in her throat, and her legs felt like they might give out at any moment. It was as if time itself had stopped, and she was no longer in the present but pulled back 7 years to that awful day when she had been told he was gone. But here he was, alive, breathing, standing just a few feet away from her. It didn't make sense. Her mind raced, trying to piece together the impossible. Richard had died. They had found his car in the river. There had been a funeral, a memorial service. She had cried over his absence, grieved his loss every single day since. How could he be standing there now, as if nothing had happened? Before she could even process what to do, Richard turned slightly, and that's when Mary saw her. A young woman, standing close beside him, her hand gently resting on his arm. She was beautiful, tall, slender, with long dark hair and a perfect smile that seemed so at ease with Richard, as if they had been together for years. They exchanged a brief glance, and then the woman laughed at something Richard said, her head tilting back in an intimate, carefree way. The scene hit Mary like a punch to the gut. Her chest tightened, and for a moment, she couldn't breathe. Her vision blurred, and she had to grip the cart even harder to steady herself. Was this real? Was she hallucinating? A cruel trick of the mind brought on by years of loneliness and longing. But no, it was real. Too real. Richard turned fully now, and Mary's heart nearly stopped as their eyes met. His smile faltered, and for a split second, there was a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by a look of pure shock. His face paled, and the color drained from his lips as if he had seen a ghost. But it was Mary who felt like the ghost, standing there, frozen in time, watching the man she thought she had lost forever. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, to march over there and shake him until he explained why he had left her, why he had abandoned her and their daughter. But all she could do was stand there, rooted to the spot, her body betraying her mind's desperate urge to act. Richard hesitated for a moment, clearly unsure of what to do, and then he quickly turned back to the woman at his side. He whispered something to her, and the two of them started walking toward the hotel exit as if nothing had happened, as if Mary had just been another face in the crowd, irrelevant and forgotten. But she wasn't irrelevant. She wasn't going to be forgotten. Without thinking, Mary let go of the cart and hurried after them. Her heart pounded in her chest, every step feeling like she was moving through thick, heavy air. Questions flooded her mind, each one more overwhelming than the last. Where had he been all these years? Who was that woman? And most importantly, why had he left her? Why had he let her believe he was dead? Richard and the woman stepped outside, and Mary followed, her hands trembling as she pushed through the heavy doors that led to the hotel's grand entrance. She caught sight of them again, just as they were climbing into a sleek black car. Mary's voice caught in her throat, and she almost called out to him. Almost. But she couldn't. She couldn't bring herself to say his name. Instead, she stood there, her mind spinning, her world unraveling before her eyes as the car drove away into the night. Richard was alive. Mary didn't sleep that night. Her mind was a hurricane of emotions, Shock, betrayal, confusion. Every time she closed her eyes, the image of Richard standing next to that woman replayed in her mind like a broken record. She couldn't comprehend it. How could he be alive after all these years? How could he have let her grieve for him, mourn him, raise their daughter alone, thinking he was dead? And now, he was here, living a life with another woman. She got through her morning routine on autopilot, getting Isabella ready for school, packing her lunch, and trying her best to hold back the tears that threatened to spill over. Isabella was as bubbly and innocent as ever, unaware of the storm raging inside her mother. Mary forced a smile as she kissed her daughter goodbye and watched her walk into the school building. Once Isabella was out of sight, her forced calmness shattered. There was no escaping it now. She had to face Richard. She had to know why. After dropping Isabella off, Mary made her way back to the hotel. It wasn't her day to work, but she didn't care. She wasn't there for work. She was there for answers. She needed to see him, to confront him, to make sense of this nightmare that had suddenly become her reality. Mary's heart pounded in her chest as she walked through the familiar halls of the hotel, her footsteps echoing off the polished floors. The guests moved around her, oblivious to the turmoil she carried inside. She scanned the lobby, searching for any sign of him. Would he be there? Would he try to run again? And what would she say to him when she finally saw him? Then, like a cruel twist of fate, she spotted him. Richard stood at the concierge desk, his back turned to her once again, but this time there was no woman at his side. He was alone. Mary's legs felt like they were made of lead as she moved toward him, every step heavier than the last. Her breath quickened, her hands balled into fists at her sides. She had no idea what she was going to say, but she knew she couldn't let this moment pass. "Richard?" The word slipped out of her mouth before she could stop it. It wasn't a shout, but it was firm, loud enough to make him turn around. And when he did, his expression was exactly what she expected. Shock, fear, and a flicker of guilt. "Mary." His voice was barely more than a whisper, but it was unmistakable. It was the voice she had dreamed of for years, the voice she had replayed in her mind during the lonely nights when she had missed him the most. But now, hearing it again, it was tainted by the lies, by the betrayal that had followed. Her stomach twisted, a mixture of anger and disbelief bubbling to the surface. "You're alive," she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of emotions she could barely contain. "You're alive, Richard. After all this time. 7 years. 7 years. And I thought you were dead." Richard swallowed hard, his eyes darting around the lobby as if searching for an escape. But there was no escaping this now. He had been caught, and they both knew it. I can explain," he stammered, his voice weak. He took a step closer, but Mary took a step back, her body tense with anger. She wasn't ready to let him get close. Not yet. "Explain," Mary repeated, her voice rising. "Explain how you let me believe you were dead. How you left me to raise our daughter alone. You let us suffer, Richard. I had to tell Isabella that her father was gone. I had to tell her you weren't coming back." Her voice cracked, and she bit her lip, fighting the tears that threatened to spill over. She wouldn't cry in front of him. Not now. Richard ran a hand through his hair, his face pale. "It wasn't supposed to be like this, Mary. I swear I never meant to hurt you." "You didn't mean to hurt me?" Mary's voice was sharp, cutting through the air like a knife. "You faked your own death, Richard. You left me. You left Isabella. How could you?" His eyes dropped to the floor, shame creeping over his face. "I didn't have a choice," he muttered. "I got involved in something dangerous. I had to disappear. It was the only way." Mary shook her head, disbelief washing over her. "You had to disappear. You had to disappear from me, from your daughter." "I stole money," Richard confessed, his voice barely a whisper now. From the company. A lot of money. And they were going to come after me. If I didn't leave, they would have found us. They would have hurt you. Hurt Isabella. The world around Mary seemed to tilt on its axis. You stole money? That's why you did this. That's why you left us. He nodded, the weight of his guilt pulling him down. I had to protect you. I had to protect both of you. Mary felt a sickening sensation in her stomach. Protection. Was this what he called protecting them? Abandoning them? Letting them think he was dead? How could he justify something like that? And then, as if to drive the knife deeper, Richard added, Lauren, she helped me. I couldn't have done it without her. Mary stared at him, the final piece of the puzzle falling into place. Lauren. The woman from last night. His new life. His new beginning. And Mary was just left with the ashes of the old one. The weight of Richard's words hung in the air between them, thick and suffocating. Mary stood there, her mind spinning as she tried to make sense of everything he had just revealed. 7 years of grief, loneliness, and raising Isabella on her own, all of it had been built on a lie Richard had carefully constructed to protect himself, leaving her and their daughter in the dark. Lauren helped you, Mary repeated, the name tasting bitter on her tongue. It felt wrong to even say it, to acknowledge this woman who had taken her place in Richard's life. She helped you disappear. Richard nodded, his gaze still fixed on the floor, unable to meet her eyes. Yes. I met her a few months before I left. She worked at the same company, and when I got in too deep, she was the only one who knew what was going on. She helped me plan everything, helped me disappear. We've been together ever since. Mary's chest tightened, a mix of rage and betrayal clawing at her from the inside. You've been together? Her voice trembled, the hurt seeping into every word. So what? You built a new life with her while I was here? Picking up the pieces of the one you destroyed? It wasn't like that, Richard said quickly, finally looking up at her, his eyes pleading. It wasn't about replacing you or Isabella. I swear, Mary, I never stopped thinking about you. About both of you. Thinking about us. Mary let out a bitter laugh, the sound harsh and sharp. Thinking about us while you were living your new life with her, while you were hiding from the mess you made. Do you have any idea what you left behind? Richard flinched at her words, but Mary didn't care. She wasn't going to hold back anymore. 7 years of pain and anger were bubbling up inside her, and she wasn't going to let him off the hook. Isabella, Mary continued, her voice cracking as she thought of her daughter. She asks about you all the time, you know. She thinks you're some kind of hero, off somewhere, watching over us. And I let her believe that because I didn't have the heart to tell her the truth. But now I realize I should have told her a long time ago that her father wasn't a hero. He was a coward. Richard winced, the word hitting him like a slap across the face. Mary, please. No, Richard. Mary cut him off, her eyes blazing with a fire he hadn't seen before. You don't get to come back into my life and act like this is something we can fix. You destroyed us. You left me to raise our daughter on my own. You made me believe you were dead. And for what? So you could run off with your new girlfriend and play house? It wasn't like that, Richard shouted, his voice rising for the first time. I didn't have a choice. If I had stayed, they would have killed me. And maybe they would have come after you and Isabella too. I did what I had to do to keep you both safe. Safe? Mary's voice dripped with disbelief. You call this keeping us safe? You left us, Richard. You let me mourn you. You let me think you were gone forever. And now you expect me to just accept that you did it to protect us. Richard's face softened, the fight draining out of him. He stepped closer, his voice quieter now, almost desperate. I made mistakes, Mary. I know that. But I never stopped loving you, and I never stopped loving Isabella. Please, you have to believe me. Mary felt her heart tighten at his words, but she couldn't afford to let herself be swayed by them. Not anymore. Love wasn't enough. Not after everything he had done. Not after the years she had spent alone, struggling to provide for Isabella, missing him every single day, only to find out that he had been alive the whole time, living a lie. "And what about now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What happens now? You've built a life with Lauren. What do you want from me?" Richard hesitated, his eyes searching hers for something. Understanding, forgiveness, maybe even a way out of the mess he had created. "I don't know," he admitted. "I didn't plan on seeing you again. I thought you'd moved on. But when I saw you yesterday, everything came rushing back. I realized I couldn't keep running from this, from us." "There is no us anymore," Mary said coldly. "When you made sure of that." Richard opened his mouth to protest, but Mary held up a hand, silencing him. "You want forgiveness? You want me to believe that you did all this to protect us? Fine. But that doesn't change what you've done. And it doesn't change the fact that you've been living a lie for 7 years while I've been picking up the pieces of my life without you." She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I can't go back, Richard. I won't. And I'm not going to let you walk back into Isabella's life as if nothing happened." Richard's eyes widened in panic. "No, please, don't take her away from me. She's my daughter. I want to be a part of her life." "You had your chance," Mary said, her voice firm. "And you threw it away. Now you have to live with that." The coldness in Mary's voice left Richard standing there, helpless, as though the ground beneath him had been pulled away. For the first time since their conversation began, it hit him. He had truly lost her. Not just in the sense of their marriage or love, but in the deep, irreparable way that meant she no longer saw him as someone she could trust. He had gambled everything. His life, his family, his marriage. And now he was left with the devastating consequences. Mary took a step back, distancing herself not just physically, but emotionally. Her mind was racing with thoughts of Isabella. What would this revelation mean for her daughter? She had spent years building a story, a delicate fantasy, in which Richard's absence was framed as something noble. Isabella had clung to the belief that her father was out there in some far-off place, watching over them. Now, that beautiful lie had come crashing down, and Mary was left holding the pieces. But one thing was clear to her. Richard had to pay for what he had done, not just to her, but to Isabella. He had stolen years from both of them, years that could never be recovered. And now, knowing the truth about his crimes, Mary understood there was only one course of action. "You need to leave," Mary said, her voice steady but cold. She couldn't bear to look at him anymore, not after everything she'd just heard. "Mary, please," Richard started, taking a tentative step toward her, but she stopped him with a single glare. "I'm serious, Richard. Leave. You can't fix this. You can't just walk back into my life and expect me to pretend like the last 7 years didn't happen. I can't forgive you for what you've done. Not this time." Richard opened his mouth, but the words died in his throat. He looked at her with a mixture of guilt and desperation, as though he wanted to plead his case but knew deep down that no amount of explaining could undo what he had done. "Does Isabella know?" Richard asked softly, his eyes searching hers for some glimpse of hope. "She doesn't know anything yet," Mary replied, her tone sharp. "But she will, and when she does, it'll be on my terms, not yours." Mary could feel the weight of the decision she was about to make pressing down on her, but she refused to let it shake her resolve. There was no going back. Richard had forfeited any chance at redemption when he chose to lie, to run, to live a life with Lauren while leaving his family in ruins. Now, it was time for him to face the consequences. "I'm going to the police," Mary stated firmly, watching as Richard's face paled. "You've been living a lie, hiding from the law, but that's over now. You don't get to escape what you've done." Richard's eyes widened, panic flickering across his face. "Mary, no. You can't do that. I'll go to prison." "And you deserve it," Mary shot back, her voice filled with a quiet fury. "You deserve to pay for what you did, not just to me, but to everyone you've wronged. You've been running for too long, Richard. It's time for it to end." Richard took a shaky breath, his eyes darting around the lobby as if searching for an escape. But there was no escaping this. He had made his bed, and now he would have to lie in it. The silence between them stretched, heavy and oppressive, until finally Richard spoke. "And what about Isabella?" His voice broke as he said her name, and for the briefest moment, Mary saw a flash of the man she had once loved. The man who had held her hand when they first found out she was pregnant. The man who had promised to be there for her and their child, no matter what. But that man was gone. "I'll tell her the truth," Mary said quietly. "She deserves to know who you really are." Richard's face crumpled with emotion, his hands trembling as he tried to hold himself together. "Please, don't take her away from me. I want to see her. I want to be part of her life, Mary. I made mistakes, but I'm still her father." "Her father?" Mary's voice shook with anger. "You stopped being her father the day you left us, the day you let us think you were dead. Isabella deserves better than you. She deserves a father who would have stayed." Tears filled Richard's eyes, but Mary's heart had hardened. She had cried too many tears for him already. Now, it was time to think about Isabella and what was best for her future. Richard wiped at his face, defeated. "I don't know what to say. I don't know how to make this right." "You can't," Mary replied, her voice soft but firm. "You can't make this right, Richard. But you can finally face the consequences of your actions." She turned to leave, not waiting for a response, her mind already made up. She would go to the police. She would tell them everything. Richard would be held accountable, and maybe, just maybe, she could finally close this chapter of her life and start a new one with Isabella. One free from lies, from betrayal, and from the weight of the past. As she walked away, she felt the heaviness of years of grief and anger start to lift. For the first time in what felt like forever, Mary could see a future. A future where she was no longer defined by the man who had abandoned her, but by the strength she had found to stand on her own. Mary stood in front of the police station, her heart pounding in her chest. She had spent the entire night thinking through every detail of what she was about to do. It wasn't an easy decision, and the weight of it pressed heavily on her shoulders. Going to the police meant that she would be exposing everything, not just Richard's crimes, but also the fact that he was alive. It would change everything for her, for Isabella, and for the life they had built since he died. But it had to be done. There was no other way. She couldn't let Richard get away with what he had done, not just to her, but to all the people whose lives he had ruined with his schemes. And more than that, she couldn't allow him to be a part of Isabella's life without consequences. He had chosen his path the day he left them, and now he would have to face the repercussions. The door to the station felt heavy as she pushed it open, the cold air inside hitting her face like a wake-up call. Her legs trembled slightly as she made her way to the front desk, where a stern-looking officer sat behind a glass window, flipping through paperwork. "I need to report a crime," Mary said, her voice barely louder than a whisper. The officer looked up, his brow furrowing as he took in her appearance. "What kind of crime, ma'am?" Mary hesitated for a moment, the words sticking in her throat. It was real now. There was no turning back. Fraud. Embezzlement. My husband. He faked his death. The officer blinked, were clearly caught off guard by the weight of her statement. He sat up straighter, setting his papers aside. "You're going to have to explain that," he said, his tone more serious now. Mary took a deep breath and began to recount everything, from Richard's supposed death to her discovery that he was alive and living with Lauren. She told the officer about the stolen money, about how Richard had claimed it was to protect her and Isabella, and how he had been on the run ever since. As she spoke, she could feel the tension building inside her. Every word felt like she was tearing open old wounds, but it was necessary. It was the only way to make sure that Richard faced justice for what he had done. The officer listened intently, jotting down notes as Mary laid out the details. When she finished, he stood up and motioned for her to follow him. "We'll need a formal statement," he said. "Come with me." Mary nodded and followed him to a small, dimly lit room at the back of the station. There, she sat down and gave her full statement, answering questions about Richard's actions and providing as much detail as she could about his whereabouts, the money he had stolen, and the life he had been living since faking his death. It felt surreal, sitting there in that cold, sterile room, laying bare the darkest parts of her life. But Mary knew it was the right thing to do. She couldn't protect Richard anymore, not after everything he had done. She couldn't let him waltz back into their lives without paying for his crimes. After what felt like hours, the officer stood and gave her a reassuring nod. "We'll open an investigation. If what you're saying is true, we'll track him down and bring him in. You did the right thing coming here." Mary nodded, though the reassurance felt hollow. She had done what needed to be done. But that didn't make it any easier. It didn't erase the years of betrayal, the heartbreak of discovering that the man she had once loved had been living a double life. As she left the station, the sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the streets. The air was cool, and for the first time in a long while, Mary felt a sliver of relief. She had made her decision. There was no turning back now. Richard would be held accountable, and she could finally start to move forward. But as she walked back to her car, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, her heart skipping a beat when she saw the name on the screen. Lauren. Mary hesitated, her thumb hovering over the screen. Why was Lauren calling her? What could she possibly want after everything that had happened? With a deep breath, Mary swiped to answer the call. "Mary," Lauren's voice came through the line, urgent and breathless. "We need to talk." Mary's stomach tightened. The last thing she wanted was to hear from Lauren, but there was something in her tone, an edge of panic that made her pause. "I don't have anything to say to you, Lauren," Mary replied, her voice cold. "It's about Richard," Lauren insisted. "There's something you don't know. Please, meet me. I'll explain everything." Mary's mind raced. She had already gone to the police. What could Lauren possibly have to add now? But curiosity gnawed at her, and despite every instinct telling her to hang up, she found herself asking, "Where?" Lauren gave her the name of a cafe downtown, and before Mary could second-guess herself, she agreed. There was something more to this story, and she needed to know what it was. As she started the car and drove toward the cafe, her thoughts swirled with uncertainty. What could Lauren possibly reveal that would change anything? And more importantly, what did she really want from Mary? She had already made her decision. Richard was going to pay for his crimes, but the nagging feeling in her gut told her that whatever Lauren had to say could shift everything once again. Mary pulled up to the small cafe, its neon sign flickering softly in the early evening light. She parked her car, staring at the entrance for a long moment, wondering what she was doing here. Meeting with Lauren felt like the last thing she wanted to do, but there was something about the urgency in her voice that had piqued Mary's curiosity. What else could there possibly be to this story? She took a deep breath and stepped out of the car, her legs feeling heavy as she walked toward the door. The cafe was mostly empty, a few patrons scattered around at small tables, nursing their drinks. In the corner, she saw Lauren sitting alone, her face drawn and tired, far different from the confident woman Mary had seen with Richard just days before. Mary hesitated, then approached the table. Lauren looked up as she neared, her expression a mixture of relief and guilt. "Thank you for coming," she said softly, gesturing for Mary to sit. Mary sat down across from her, keeping her posture rigid, her emotions tightly controlled. "Make this quick, Lauren. I don't have time for games." Lauren swallowed hard, her hands shaking as she wrapped them around her coffee cup. "I didn't know," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. Not at first." "Didn't know what?" Mary's voice was flat, distrustful. I didn't know about you, about Isabella, Lauren admitted, her eyes flickering up to meet Mary's. When I met Richard, he told me he was alone, that he had no family. He made it seem like he was this tragic figure on the run from people who were out to get him. I had no idea he had faked his death, or that he left behind a wife and child. I only found out later, after we were already involved. Mary clenched her jaw, struggling to keep her anger in check. And what? You stayed with him anyway, after you found out the truth. Lauren flinched, guilt clouding her face. I didn't know what to do, she admitted. I was already in too deep. By the time I realized what he had done, I felt trapped. Richard. He's not the man I thought he was. He's controlling, manipulative. I wanted to leave, but he always found a way to pull me back in. Mary stared at Lauren, her mind racing. She had always assumed Lauren was just as guilty as Richard, but now, hearing her side of the story, she realized it was more complicated than she had thought. Lauren wasn't just Richard's accomplice. She was another victim of his lies. You expect me to believe that? Mary asked, her voice laced with skepticism. You were with him for 7 years, and you never once thought to leave. You helped him run. You helped him hide. You could have come forward at any time, but you didn't. I know, Lauren said, her voice breaking. And I hate myself for it. But it wasn't that simple. Richard has connections, people who protect him. Every time I tried to leave, he threatened me. He said he would ruin my life, that I'd go to prison too. He said he'd find a way to take everything from me. Mary felt a cold chill run down her spine. Richard had always been charming, but there had been moments in their marriage when she had glimpsed a darker side of him, a side she had chosen to ignore, or maybe to justify. But hearing Lauren's words now, it all made sense. Richard hadn't just lied to her. He had manipulated everyone around him, bending them to his will. Why are you telling me this now? Mary asked, narrowing her eyes. Why didn't you just stay quiet and let him keep living his lie? Lauren looked down at the table, her fingers trembling as she picked at the edge of her napkin. Because he's planning to run again, she said quietly. He knows you went to the police and he's already making arrangements to disappear. He'll take the money and vanish, just like before. Mary's heart sank. How do you know that? Lauren's eyes filled with tears as she looked back up at Mary. Because he told me, she whispered. He told me to pack my things, that we'd be leaving by the end of the week. I can't do it again, Mary. I can't live like this anymore. Mary leaned back in her chair, her mind spinning. Richard was planning to run. Of course he was. That's what he did. He ran when things got tough, leaving destruction in his wake. But this time, Mary wasn't going to let him get away with it. You need to go to the police, Mary said, her voice firm. Tell them everything you just told me. They can protect you. They can make sure Richard doesn't get away this time. Lauren shook her head, her expression filled with fear. You don't understand. Richard has people everywhere. If I go to the police, he'll know. He'll come after me. He's going to come after you anyway, Mary shot back. He's not going to stop until he gets what he wants. The only way to end this is to expose him. Lauren was silent for a long moment, her eyes flickering with doubt and fear. But then, slowly, she nodded. Okay, she whispered. I'll do it. I'll go to the police. Mary nodded, a sense of determination settling over her. They had one chance to stop Richard, and they were going to take it. Together. Mary felt a surge of resolve as she left the cafe, her mind buzzing with the plan that was now forming. She and Lauren were going to bring Richard down, once and for all. There was no other option. He had lied, manipulated, and deceived them both for too long, and he needed to face justice. The next morning, Mary stood in front of the hotel where Richard and Lauren were staying. She had texted Lauren late the previous night, outlining their plan. Lauren had agreed to meet with her one final time before going to the police. It was dangerous. But they both knew that if they didn't act now, Richard would slip away again. vanishing like a ghost with all the money he had stolen. Lauren appeared at the entrance of the hotel, looking nervous but determined. She walked toward Mary, clutching her phone tightly in her hand. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice shaky. "We don't have a choice," Mary replied, her own voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "This is the only way." The plan was simple, but risky. Lauren would secretly record a conversation with Richard, getting him to admit to everything: the embezzlement, the faked death, and his plans to flee again. Once they had the recording, they would take it to the police as undeniable proof of his crimes. It would be enough to put him behind bars for good. Lauren hesitated, glancing back toward the hotel. What if he doesn't take the bait? Mary clenched her jaw. He will. He's arrogant enough to think he's still in control. Lauren nodded, though her eyes were filled with doubt. Mary could see how terrified she was, and a part of her couldn't blame her. Richard was dangerous. He had spent years manipulating everyone around him, and now they were trying to outsmart him. It wasn't going to be easy. "I'll be right outside," Mary said, trying to offer some reassurance. "As soon as you have the recording, we'll go straight to the police." Lauren took a deep breath, steeling herself. "Okay, let's do this." With a final nod, Lauren turned and headed back into the hotel. Mary watched her go, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it. Everything was riding on this moment. Inside, Lauren walked through the lobby, her mind racing with the weight of what she was about to do. She had been Richard's accomplice for so long, trapped in his web of lies and deceit, but now she was turning against him. She could only hope that this would be the end of it. When she reached the suite they shared, she paused for a moment outside the door, her hand trembling as she reached for the handle. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door and stepped inside. Richard was sitting at the desk, his laptop open in front of him, the screen filled with spreadsheets and documents. He glanced up as she entered, offering her a tired smile. "There you are. I've been going over the final numbers. We'll be ready to leave in a couple of days." Lauren's stomach twisted at his words. He was so casual about it, as if running away with millions of stolen dollars was just another day for him. She had to remind herself why she was doing this, why she needed to put an end to it once and for all. "Richard?" she said softly, trying to keep her voice steady. "We need to talk." Richard raised an eyebrow, leaning back in his chair. "What's wrong?" Lauren swallowed hard, glancing nervously at her phone, which was tucked into the pocket of her jacket, recording every word. I need to know that this is really it, that we're not going to be running forever." Richard's expression softened, and he stood up, walking over to her. He placed his hands gently on her shoulders, looking her in the eye. "This is the last time, I promise. Once we're out of here, no one will be able to find us. We'll be free." "Free?" Lauren echoed, her voice trembling. "And what about the people we left behind?" "The people you lied to." Richard's smile faltered slightly, and he took a step back, his eyes narrowing. "What are you getting at, Lauren?" Lauren's heart raced as she realized she had to push him further. She had to get him to admit to everything. "I just mean, all the money you stole, all the lies you told, does it ever bother you?" Richard's face darkened, suspicion creeping into his gaze. "Or, why are you asking me this now?" "Because I'm scared, Richard," she replied, her voice rising slightly. "I'm scared that one day it's all going to catch up with us. What if they find us? What if we get caught?" Richard's eyes flashed with frustration, and he turned away from her, running a hand through his hair. "We won't get caught. I told you, I have everything under control. No one knows where we are. Not even Mary." At the mention of Mary's name, Lauren felt a wave of anger surge through her. "But you let her think you were dead," she pressed, her voice shaking. "You let her raise your daughter alone. You left them both behind, Richard. How can you live with that?" Richard spun around to face her, his expression cold and unfeeling. "I did what I had to do. If I hadn't disappeared, we'd all be in trouble. It's not my fault they couldn't handle it. Lauren took a shaky breath, knowing she had what she needed. He had admitted to everything. Now it was time to end this. "I'm going to the police, Richard," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Richard's face twisted into a mask of fury. "What did you say?" Before she could answer, he lunged toward her, grabbing her arm with a force that sent her reeling. "You're not going anywhere," he snarled. Lauren gasped as Richard's grip tightened around her arm, his eyes wild with fury. She struggled to pull away, her heart pounding in her chest as fear surged through her. This was the moment she had feared all along, the moment when Richard's carefully constructed mask would shatter, revealing the true darkness beneath. "You think you can betray me?" Richard hissed, his face inches from hers. "After everything I've done for you. After everything I've risked." Lauren's mind raced. She needed to get out, needed to escape before he completely lost control. But his grip was like iron, and she knew that one wrong move could end with her paying the ultimate price. Still, she had to keep her composure, had to stall long enough to figure out a way to get free. "Richard, please," she whispered, trying to keep her voice calm despite the terror threatening to consume her. "I'm not trying to betray you. I'm scared. I don't want to run anymore." He narrowed his eyes, suspicion etched into every line of his face. For a moment, it looked like he might believe her, like he might soften. But then, his gaze flickered down to her jacket pocket, where her phone was hidden. The color drained from his face as realization hit. His grip tightened even more, almost crushing her arm. "Your phone," he spat. "You're recording me." Panic surged through Lauren as Richard's hand shot toward her pocket, yanking the phone out with a violent jerk. He held it up, his face contorted with rage. "You thought you could trap me, didn't you? You and Mary both. You're just like her, weak, pathetic." "Richard, please," Lauren pleaded, but he wasn't listening. With a snarl, Richard smashed the phone against the wall, shattering it into pieces. The sound echoed through the room like the final blow to all her efforts. The recording was gone. Everything they had worked for was destroyed in an instant. For a moment, the air between them hung thick with tension. Richard's chest heaved as he stared at the broken phone, his mind clearly racing with his next move. But Lauren could see it in his eyes. He wasn't thinking straight anymore. He was desperate, cornered, and more dangerous than ever. "You've ruined everything," he growled, his voice low and menacing. "I should have known better than to trust you." He grabbed her by both arms now, shaking her violently. "What did you tell her? What did you and Mary plan?" Lauren's mind was spinning, her body trembling under his grip. She had to think fast, had to find a way to get out of this before it was too late. Her eyes darted toward the door. If she could just get free, she might have a chance to run. "I didn't tell her anything," Lauren lied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I swear, Richard, she doesn't know anything. We didn't plan anything." But Richard wasn't buying it. His eyes were wild, frantic. "Don't lie to me," he spat. "You think I'm an idiot? You think I haven't figured this out? You and Mary have been working together from the start." Just then, there was a knock on the door. It was a small sound, but in the charged atmosphere of the room, it felt like a bomb going off. Both Richard and Lauren froze. The knock came again, louder this time. "Richard," it was Mary's voice, steady but firm. "I know you're in there. Open the door." Lauren's heart leaped at the sound of her voice. She hadn't expected Mary to come inside the hotel, but here she was, right on time. Maybe, just maybe, they still had a chance. Richard's grip loosened just enough for Lauren to pull away, stumbling backward as she did. She moved toward the door, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "Mary, get out of here," she called, her voice hoarse with fear. "It's not safe." But Mary wasn't going anywhere. On the other side of the door, she could hear the commotion, and she knew things had escalated. She had been waiting in the lobby, anxiously checking her phone. when the text from Lauren stopped coming. She feared the worst. "Richard, it's over," Mary called through the door, her voice calm but unwavering. "You're not going to run again. The police are on their way. Let Lauren go." Inside the room, Richard's face twisted with a mixture of rage and desperation. He looked from Lauren to the door, the walls of his life closing in around him. For a long moment, the tension was unbearable, neither Lauren nor Richard moving as they both realized the finality of the situation. And then, with a growl, Richard lunged toward the door, ripping it open. He stood face to face with Mary, his eyes burning with fury. "You think you've won, don't you?" he spat, his voice dripping with venom. "You think you can stop me?" Mary stood her ground, meeting his gaze with a steely resolve. "I already have." Before Richard could respond, the sound of sirens pierced the air, growing louder as they neared the hotel. Mary didn't flinch, her eyes never leaving Richard's. "It's over, Richard," she said softly. "You're not going to hurt anyone anymore." The look of shock on his face was fleeting, quickly replaced by a cold, calculating expression. But he knew. He knew there was no escaping this time. The police would be there any second, and his world, his carefully crafted world of lies, was about to come crashing down. Richard turned back toward Lauren, his eyes dark with anger, before stepping aside and letting her pass. She rushed to Mary's side, her breath shaky but relieved. Together they stood in the doorway as the police arrived, their flashing lights reflecting off the walls of the hotel. Richard, defeated, slowly raised his hands in surrender as the officers moved in. As Richard was led away in handcuffs, the flashing lights of the police cars reflecting off the hotel's polished glass exterior, Mary stood still, watching him go. It was finally over. The man who had once been the center of her world, who had torn her life apart with his lies and manipulation, was finally facing justice. But the victory felt hollow, the weight of everything she had sacrificed pressing down on her shoulders. Lauren stood next to her, silent, her eyes fixed on the ground. The tension between them was palpable. Two women who had been connected through a web of lies, now standing on the other side of it, but still not free from the damage Richard had caused. "You did it," Lauren said softly, breaking the silence. "You stopped him." Mary turned to face her, the exhaustion evident in her eyes. "We did it," she corrected, though her voice lacked any real sense of triumph. It didn't feel like a win. Not after everything. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The world around them was still moving, but it felt distant. Police officers talking quietly among themselves, guests peeking out from the hotel's entrance, curious about the commotion. But for Mary, everything was muted, like the aftermath of a storm. The damage was done, and now she had to figure out how to rebuild. Lauren shifted uncomfortably, her guilt hanging heavy between them. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry for everything. I should have left him when I found out what he was doing. I should have come forward sooner." Mary looked at her, the anger she had once felt for Lauren now replaced with something else. Understanding, maybe, or just a shared sense of betrayal. Lauren had been a victim too, caught in the same web of deceit that had ensnared Mary for years. "It wasn't just your fault," Mary said, her voice tired but sincere. "Richard, he knew how to manipulate people. He used you, just like he used me." Lauren nodded, wiping away the tears that had started to form in the corners of her eyes. "I wish I could take it all back," she whispered. "So do I," Mary admitted. "But we can't. We just have to figure out how to move forward." Lauren nodded again, but Mary could see the doubt in her eyes. Moving forward seemed impossible right now, for both of them. Mary sighed, turning her attention back to the police cars. Richard had disappeared into the back of one of the vehicles, and as the door slammed shut, she felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. This man had been her husband once, the father of her child, and now he was gone for good. She thought of Isabella, waiting for her at home, still blissfully unaware of the storm that had just passed through their lives. Mary knew that telling her the truth about Richard was inevitable. There would be no more stories about a father watching over her from afar. No more pretending that he was some kind of hero. The truth was much darker, and Mary would have to find a way to explain it to her daughter without shattering the innocence that Isabella still held on to. But that conversation could wait for tomorrow. Tonight, Mary just needed to get through the weight of everything that had happened. She turned to Lauren, her voice softer now. "You should go home. Get some rest. We'll have to talk to the police tomorrow, but for now, there's nothing more we can do." Lauren nodded, her expression filled with exhaustion. "Thank you, Mary, for everything." Mary gave her a small, tired smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Take care of yourself, Lauren." With that, Lauren walked away, disappearing into the night, leaving Mary standing alone in the quiet aftermath of Richard's arrest. For a long time, Mary stayed where she was, staring at the empty street, the lights of the hotel casting long shadows on the pavement. Her mind raced with thoughts of what would come next. The police investigation would be long and drawn out, and Richard would likely spend the rest of his life in prison. But that didn't fix the years that had been stolen from her, or the lies that had been woven into the fabric of her life. Eventually, she made her way back to her car, her body heavy with exhaustion. As she drove through the quiet streets toward home, her thoughts drifted to Isabella. How would her daughter react when she found out the truth? Would she understand why her father had done what he did? Or would she feel the same sense of betrayal that Mary had carried for so long? When Mary finally pulled into her driveway, the house was dark, save for the soft glow of a lamp in the living room. Isabella was asleep, as always, unaware of the storm her mother had just weathered. Mary sat in the car for a moment, staring at the house, the place where she had worked so hard to create a life for her daughter, a life built on lies she hadn't even known she was telling. She had done everything she could to protect Isabella, to shield her from the truth about her father. But now, it was time to face the consequences of those choices. With a deep breath, Mary got out of the car and walked inside. The house was quiet, peaceful, as if nothing had changed, but everything had changed. She stood in the hallway for a moment, letting the silence settle around her. Tomorrow, she would have to tell Isabella the truth. Tomorrow, the weight of everything would come crashing down. But for tonight, she would allow herself a moment of peace. A moment to breathe, to feel the relief of knowing that Richard could never hurt them again. And as she turned off the light and headed to bed, she knew that no matter how difficult the road ahead would be, she had done what was necessary. She had made the sacrifice for her daughter, for herself, for the life they deserved. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a soft, golden glow over the quiet room. Mary sat at the edge of Isabella's bed, watching her daughter sleep peacefully, her small chest rising and falling with each breath. There was a calmness in the air, a sense of stillness that Mary hadn't felt in years. The storm that had torn through her life was finally over, but now came the hardest part, telling Isabella the truth. She brushed a strand of hair from Isabella's face, her heart heavy with the weight of what was to come. How could she explain to her little girl that the man she had spent years believing was a hero was in fact the opposite? That the father she had dreamed of meeting one day had betrayed them both? It was a conversation no mother ever wanted to have, but there was no avoiding it now. "Mom?" Isabella's voice was soft as she blinked awake, her big brown eyes focusing on Mary. "What are you doing here?" Mary smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Just watching you sleep, sweetheart. You looked so peaceful." Isabella yawned, stretching her arms above her head. "Is today a school day?" "Not today," Mary said, shaking her head. "I thought we could spend the day together, just you and me." Isabella's face lit up with excitement. "Can we go to the park? And maybe get ice cream after?" Mary's chest tightened, the innocence in her daughter's voice, the joy she found in such simple things. It was exactly what she had fought to protect all these years. But now, the truth was going to change everything. "We'll do all of that," Mary promised, her voice soft. "But first, there's something I need to talk to you about, something important." Isabella tilted her head, her brow furrowing in confusion. "What is it, Mom?" Mary took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. "It's about your dad." At the mention of her father, Isabella's eyes brightened. She had always been curious about him, asking questions that Mary had done her best to answer with half-truths and vague reassurances. But now, there was no more room for stories. "Did you see him?" Isabella asked, sitting up in bed, her voice filled with hope. "Is he coming back?" Mary swallowed hard, the lump in her throat making it difficult to speak. She reached out and took Isabella's hand, holding it gently in hers. "Sweetheart, your dad isn't who you think he is. He made some very bad choices. He hurt a lot of people, including us." Isabella's smile faded, her face clouded with confusion. "What do you mean?" Mary's voice trembled as she spoke, but she forced herself to continue. "Your dad, he didn't die in an accident like I told you. He's been alive this whole time. But he did something wrong, something really wrong. He took money from people that didn't belong to him, and he ran away." Isabella's eyes widened, her small hands tightening around Mary's. "He's alive? He lied to us?" "Yes," Mary whispered, her heart breaking as she watched the realization wash over her daughter's face. "He lied to us both, and because of that, he's in a lot of trouble now. He's not coming back. Isabella. Not this time." Tears filled Isabella's eyes, and she pulled her hand away from Mary's, shaking her head. "But why didn't he come back? Why didn't he want to see me?" Mary's heart shattered at the question, the pain in her daughter's voice cutting deeper than anything she had ever felt. "I don't know, baby," she said softly. "I don't have all the answers. But what I do know is that he made his choices, and those choices hurt us. And now, we have to move on." Isabella wiped at her eyes, sniffling as she tried to process everything. "So, he's never coming back?" "No," Mary said, shaking her head. "He's not." For a long moment, there was silence between them, the weight of the truth settling over both of them. Mary watched as Isabella struggled to understand, her little mind working through the pain and confusion. It was a lot for anyone to take in, let alone a 6-year-old girl. Finally, Isabella looked up at Mary, her voice small and broken. "Are we going to be okay, Mom?" Mary smiled through her own tears, pulling Isabella into her arms and holding her close. "Yes, sweetheart," she whispered, kissing the top of her head. "We're going to be okay. I promise." They stayed like that for a while, wrapped in each other's arms, the world outside their little bubble fading away. For the first time in what felt like forever, Mary felt a sense of peace. It wasn't perfect, and the road ahead would still be hard, but she knew now that they could face it together. Later that day, they went to the park, just as Isabella had wanted. They played on the swings, ate ice cream, and laughed in the sunlight. The weight of Richard's betrayal still lingered, but it no longer held the same power over Mary. She had made the choice to break free from the past, to stop living in the shadow of a man who had never truly been there for them. As they sat on a bench, watching the sun begin to set, Isabella leaned her head against Mary's shoulder. "I'm glad it's just us," she said softly. Mary smiled, her heart swelling with love for her daughter. "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mary realized that this was the beginning of something new, something better. It wouldn't be easy, but they had each other, and that was enough.